Welcome to Talkback Radio Network, the home of the Iron Microphone, with your hosts, Dr. Lawrence Gelman and Rabbi Stephen Rosenberg.
Good morning, Rabbi Stephen Rosenberg and Dr. Lawrence Gelman with you. And we are live and in color. We were going to have an interesting discussion this morning on global warming. However, the guests and we have asked a lot of different guests to come on, and unfortunately, they've all declined. I wonder why. Anyway, but we have a letter here that was sent to our producer, and I'd like to read that.
Go ahead, but let's get moving.
Let's get moving. Okay. All right. And I hope I pronounce her name right. This is from Dr. Naomi Oreskes, I believe, who is a professor at UCSD, University of California, San Diego. And this is what she writes. This is what she writes to our producer. Many thanks for the invitation. Unfortunately, I cannot accept this invitation in this format. To agree to a debate is to agree to the premise that there is a debate, which is the story that the merchants of doubt have peddled. It feeds the controversy, which as we show in our book, is their strategy. It's clever indeed, since it's awfully hard to say no to a debate without appearing close-minded. Wickedly clever, one might say. It is important for those of us who work on this issue to be clear. Science is not an opposing viewpoint. It is the results of investigation, understanding of the basic workings of our planet, our universe. It is especially ironic and sad that now this is where she takes a swipe at you, Dr. Gelman. It is especially ironic and sad that a physician who presumably uses science in his medical practice would fail to comprehend this point. I very much doubt the doctor would want to have a debate with someone who advocated the theory of illness. Okay.
That's not debatable.
I don't.
There's a lot of debate on what causes illness.
I know, and
that's just a feeble-minded person.
She uses the word anyway.
This is the kind of thinking that goes on in with the Inquisition in Spain. This is why Galileo was put into prison for saying the world is round. It would seem to me that if you really believe in what you're asserting, then you would have no fear to go and talk with anyone about it. But if you were a fraud, like most professors in environmental science are in the United States, but what we're going to do here right now is, Rabbi and listeners, is we're going to talk about the truth of global warming, and we are going to use the scientific method. I know many of you are not used to that, listening to our media, which is populated by a bunch of individuals who know nothing about how to critically think. But I'm going to go through the reasons why man-made global warming, the assertion of man-made global warming, is a hoax, but a hoax with a purpose. And Rabbi, you can interject. I'm going to be going, there's a lot here. You can interject at any point, and do you think there's something that we need to elucidate?
Well, may I just, before we go on,
ahead.
Just say that we asked a bunch of different organizations to come on and to have the opposite viewpoint, and they all declined.
Well, sure, because they're afraid, but there's a reason for it. Their livelihood depends upon the promotion of the hoax, and therefore they are dependent upon the lie continuing. When you first begin looking into the issue of man-made global warming, it's very interesting that no one discusses how we came to that conclusion. It would seem that would be a massive undertaking to get the average temperature of the Earth, and thinking of the size of the Earth, and compare that to the average temperature of the Earth over the last 100 years or so. I had thought that such a complex undertaking would require very sophisticated technology. But I was wondering what sophisticated technology existed 50 or 100 years ago that it would allow such a vast undertaking to be performed with scientific accuracy. And it turns out that, and I don't know how many of you have ever listened, but very few people even know how these conclusions are reached. Amazingly enough, the instrument being used to measure the average temperature of the Earth over the last 100 years is the thermometer, an antique that's over 300 years old, that is grossly inadequate for the job. It's almost laughable when you think how it's being done and how they're able to sway millions upon millions of people and government to believe something that with data that is obtained through such a primitive methodology. There are approximately 5,000 weather stations measuring the Earth's temperature. That information comes together and then calculated out, which is even more evidence of their subterfuge. Thermometers are very inadequate for such a job because, for one thing, a thermometer can only measure the temperature where it is. And that means the temperature changes even with the altitude. It changes if it's in the shade or not, and it changes based upon the Earth's surface is nearly 200 million square miles. 75% of the surface is covered by water, 25% by land. That means there's an average of one measuring station for every 40,000 square miles of Earth's surface, the size of Ohio. So imagine going on a weather station in Ohio, and everyone would have to go by the temperature based upon a single weather station. So if you were in Columbus, Ohio, or Canton, Ohio, you'd only have one temperature reading for both areas. All of us would say that's completely absurd. Of course, if they're not evenly distributed over 40,000 square miles. Most of these weather stations are located within urban areas, which is another problem. Urban areas produce heat. Human beings, when you have accumulation of human beings, machinery, automobiles, reflection off of asphalt, heat generators, so that even though urban centers are a very, very small portion of the Earth's surface, infinitesimally small, because these weather stations are located in urban areas or near urban areas, they are getting readings which incorporate temperatures independent from the sun. They're from these heat generators. And of course, that skews the evidence to one side and incorrectly. Now, why do we believe that the Earth is getting warmer? Because man is essentially a narcissist. We actually believe that we have our feeble efforts to on Earth can actually change the climate. That is how narcissistic we are. But if one looks at very gross information, it becomes clear that none of this makes any sense. The Earth has been much hotter and much cooler than it is today at one time or another. The Earth has had much more carbon dioxide in its environment than it has today. But look at the media hysteria to show you on a very simple basis how absurd the assertion of man-made global warming is due to the combustion of fossil fuels. The media went hysteric when this last summer in 2011, Oklahoma recorded temperatures, the hottest temperatures ever recorded in Oklahoma, which even though Oklahoma area has been around for hundreds of millions of years, and we only measure temperature there for about 100 years, they make the assertion the hottest temperature ever, of course, recorded by man. But if you look at the records from Oklahoma, you find out that the previous warmest month in Oklahoma was not in 2010 or 2000, but in 1954, 50 years earlier. Since the combustion of fossil fuel has been getting more common every year, one would expect that if the Earth's temperature was warming as a consequence of the combustion of fossil fuels, that the hottest temperatures in Oklahoma it would have been of a much more recent origin than 57 years ago. In fact, if you look at the data, which has not been skewed, because remember, the data goes to NASA and other NOAA and other organizations, which are government-run, sponsored, and are populated by a bunch of liars. If you look at the data from the individual states, what you'll find is something enlightening, that the warmest temperatures ever recorded in most states were before 1950. For example, the warmest temperature in Alabama, 114 degrees, 1925. The warmest temperature in Alaska, 100 degrees. These are all Fahrenheit, 1915. The warmest temperature in Arkansas, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 1936. The warmest temperature in California, 134 degrees Fahrenheit, 1913. The warmest temperature in Colorado, 118 degrees Fahrenheit, 1888. The warmest temperature in Delaware, 1930. In Florida, 1931. In Hawaii, 1931. In Idaho, 1934. In Iowa, 1934. In Kansas, 1936. And on and on and on. In Maine, 1911. In Michigan, 1936. And it goes on. The highest temperature ever recorded in the world, 137 degrees Fahrenheit, measured in Libya, 1922. So, if global warming was a consequence of industrialization, then why aren't the warmest days of more recent origin, since industrialization, of course, is much greater today worldwide than it is than it was back in 1950, 1930, 1910, or 1888. But we're going to have to discuss what global warming is so we can understand the hoax in its entirety. What's amazing to me is if you view the media or listen to the media, that they spend tens of thousands of hours referring to global warming and make no attempt to explain what global warming is, what the greenhouse gas is, where this all comes from. So we're going to have to go into some science. There's no science from the environmentalists, but I'm going to give you some science. Have you ever wondered why a greenhouse is warmer inside than the ambient temperature outside? That is due to the greenhouse glass effect, the glass effect. And what is that? That is, sunlight passes through glass and then hits molecules and objects, which increases their activity because of the absorption of energy. The definition of temperature is the kinetic motion of molecules. That's what temperature is. Mm-hmm. The more molecular motion you have, the higher the temperature. Molecules want to be in their lowest state of excitement of energy. And so they absorb the energy from the sun and then release it back into the environment in the form of infrared rays, which we know as heat. Infrared rays are longer than sunlight and therefore have difficulty in going back through the glass. They're blocked by the glass. And so therefore the infrared rays are trapped within the glass enclosed environment, increasing the ambient temperatures. The molecules, which are referred to as the greenhouse gas molecules, have a similar effect but through a different mechanism. The mechanism of the conservation of heat due to greenhouse gas molecules is that there are certain molecules in the atmosphere which have the capacity to absorb the electromagnetic wavelength of infrared rays, thereby increasing the activity of those molecules in the environment and increasing the temperature. Now, we must remember that despite the negative connotation now associated with the greenhouse gas effect, it is essential for life, for without its warming capabilities, the Earth would otherwise be an ice ball. Let's talk a little bit about atoms. Atoms are the basic units of an element. They are the simplest form of a substance. The smaller particles that make up atoms are called protons, neutrons, and electrons. Though each proton, neutron, and electron is identical to every other proton, neutron, and electron, regardless of the atom that they make up, Each atom of an element has different amounts of protons, neutrons, and electrons, and it is this configuration that gives every element its distinct physical and chemical properties. Two or more atoms joined together form structures called molecules. Molecules may be formed of identical atoms or atoms of different elements. The forces holding atoms to each other are atomic and molecular bonds. Now, the characteristic that determines if a molecule is a greenhouse gas or not is not dependent on the constituent atoms making up the molecule, but on the molecular structure. For example, two atoms of nitrogen form the nitrogen molecule. Two atoms of oxygen form the oxygen molecule. Both are symmetric molecules and lack greenhouse gas effect. However, if you take an atom of oxygen and combining it with two atoms of nitrogen, even though the individual atoms in molecular form have no greenhouse gas effect, when you combine nitrogen and oxygen together to form an atom of nitrous oxide, lo and behold, you have a greenhouse gas effect. Now, the atoms and molecules which make up the Earth's atmosphere are 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 1% argon, 0.038% carbon dioxide, and varying amounts of water vapor averaging about 1%.
We're going to take a break. You know, what do you think about this? What do you think about global warming? We couldn't get a guest on who wanted to...
Cowards!
Who wanted to debate it at all. They ran the other way. I'd like to hear from you. 1-888-930-1787. 1-888-930-1787 is our Talkback number. We will continue in a moment with the Talkback Radio Network, home of the Iron Microphone.
You are listening to the Talkback Radio Network. We hope you're being enriched by our program today. You may be listening via our archives or to our live broadcast. Dr. Gelman and Rabbi Rosenberg broadcast live on Thursdays from 11 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern, 10 to 11 a.m. Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. You may call the show live during those times, toll free at 888-930-1787, 888-930-1787, or you can find us in the archives 24/7 at ironmicrophone.com.
Welcome to Move Time Radio, presented by the Arthritis Foundation, and we're smack dab in the middle of our dance-a-thon to fight arthritis pain. Me, I've been grooving for 10 hours straight, baby, but I'm a boogie machine. See, movement is just one of the ways to help fight osteoarthritis pain. Another is weight loss. You get rid of just 1 pound. That's 4 pounds of pressure off each knee. For more information on managing pain, visit fightarthritispain.org. Then meet me on the dance floor. This message brought to you by the Arthritis Foundation and the Ad Council.
Dr. Lawrence Gelman is a South Texas-based physician and hospital administrator. His mission is to empower Americans with knowledge that will help change the direction of our country. Dr. Gelman has produced a series of DVDs with the facts on myriad political, social, and economic issues. At this time, he is so passionate about our country and the state of our government that he's declared a moratorium on any costs associated with his DVDs. He'll even pay the postage. Visit ironmicrophone.com and click on the store link. Choose from many outstanding DVDs, including The Hoax, Global Warming, A Convenient Lie, Holocaust, Pro-Choice, The Myth of Roe vs. Wade, and more. Visit ironmicrophone.com. Arm yourself with information that will change minds as well as the future of our country. Order the DVDs now while they're free. Do it quickly because this offer is subject to change in 90 days. Visit ironmicrophone.com and click on the Store tab to order your free DVD today.
Welcome back to the home of the Iron Microphone with your hosts, Dr. Lawrence Gelman and Rabbi Stephen Rosenberg.
We are talking about global warming this morning, and we would have had a guest here if any one of these guests from we even called Al Gore up. Al Gore said a very nice note, said he couldn't make it because he was too busy.
Busy making money.
That's true, but and while we're talking about all this, and they approach it, just so the history of this here, our producer had called various number of people from different different experts, so-called global warming, to the Sierra Club, all have declined to be on the program. We want to hear from you, too. What do you think? Global warming is real or it's just made up? 888-1888-930-1787, 1-888-930-1787. It is true that the Earth has cooled and warmed back and forth way before man was even around.
Right. Anyway, anyone who listens to this program today will, if you bother to listen carefully, you will find that we are going to completely pulverize the hoax of global warming created by man. The molecules in the Earth's atmosphere, the only ones that are of any significance as far as greenhouse gas effect, are carbon dioxide and water vapor. The greenhouse gas molecules in the Earth's atmosphere make up only 1% of the Earth's atmosphere. 95% of the greenhouse gas molecules in the atmosphere, despite all the media hysteria, is not carbon dioxide, but water vapor. And whereas carbon dioxide only accounts for 4% of all the greenhouse gas molecules in the atmosphere. Water vapor comes from the underlying liquid water, and its atmospheric concentration is independent of any of man's activities. On the other hand, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere comes from plants and animals as a result of metabolic processes. The largest source of atmospheric carbon dioxide arises from processes within bacteria and fungi that break down the carbon chains in dead animals and plants, and in that process release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. A certain amount comes from volcanoes, and the least consequential amount comes from the burning of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, by the way, are natural and made of carbon atoms. They are the remnants of once living plants and animals that over the eons of time and under great pressure have been converted into carbon and energy-rich coal and oil. They are the remnants of those plants and animals that escaped immediate decomposition by bacteria and fungi. And if they had not escaped that decomposition, that carbon dioxide would have been not converted to coal and oil. The carbon dioxide would have entered the atmosphere anyway, just from normal metabolic processes. The amount of carbon dioxide released in the combustion of fossil fuels is insignificant. The combustion of fossil fuels, as far as carbon dioxide production, is really no different than the natural metabolic processes, as alluded to. In fact, only one of every 30 molecules of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere actually comes from the combustion of fossil fuels, which makes man produce carbon dioxide through the combustion of fossil fuels only one of every 750 greenhouse gas molecule in the Earth's atmosphere. We will also now show that not only is it an insignificant quantity in the atmosphere, that carbon dioxide is a weak greenhouse gas. So on top of being insignificant in number, it is insignificant in effect. And how do we know this? Well, we can assess the relative greenhouse gas effectiveness between carbon dioxide and water vapor, and we can learn that through examination of the planetary system. The moon occupies the same region in space as Earth. It receives equal quantities, relatively equal quantities of energy as does the Earth. However, the moon, unlike the Earth, experiences enormous daily temperature variances from 250 degrees above Fahrenheit to 250 degrees below Fahrenheit on a given day. This is due to its lack of atmosphere. If we look at Mars, which does have an atmosphere, though it is farther away from the sun than is the moon, the Mars nighttime temperature is actually much warmer than the moon's, averaging only about 100 or about 100 degrees below Fahrenheit. So it's much warmer than the moon, even though it is further away, much further away from the sun than is the moon. The very low evening temperatures that is noted in Mercury. For example, Mercury is another interesting case. The evening temperature of Mercury, even though it is very, very close to the sun, is much less than Mars. The evening temperature of Mercury goes down about 300 degrees below Fahrenheit, much colder than Mars, even though Mars is many millions of miles further away from the sun. Now, if you look at the atmosphere of Mars, even though Mars' atmosphere is only 1/60th as dense as Earth's, it is nearly 100% made up of greenhouse gas molecules. So actually, the greenhouse gas concentration in Mars' atmosphere is actually greater than the greenhouse gas concentration on Earth.
And there's not a single person living there.
Nobody lives there.
Nobody lives there.
So 1.7, in fact, there's 1.7 times more greenhouse gas molecules on Mars than on Earth, and 40 times the carbon dioxide concentration. As the mass of one carbon dioxide molecule is 2.5 times greater than the mass of one water molecule, the mass of greenhouse gas molecule on Mars is 4 times greater than the mass of greenhouse gas molecules in Earth's atmosphere. Yet, the average daily temperature variance on Mars is about 100 degrees Fahrenheit between the high of the day and the low of the evening. Let's go to Venus. Venus has an atmosphere concentration 90 times greater than that of Earth's. 99% of its atmosphere is made up of carbon dioxide. Venus has a greenhouse gas concentration 9,000 times greater than Earth's, and a greenhouse gas molecular mass 22,000 times greater than Earth's. It has no daily temperature variance.
And nobody lives there either.
Nobody lives there because it has such a strong greenhouse gas effect that the temperatures at night are the same as in the daytime. And you may wonder, why are we talking about Venus? And we're going to get to that. Mercury, closer to the sun than Venus, has, but without an atmosphere, actually does not get as warm as Venus, but has an 1100 degree daily variance in temperature. So Earth, however, has only a 30 degree, the Earth on the average has a 30 degree average variance between the high of the day and the low of the evening. Now, if you observe the greenhouse gas effect on these planets, there is a peculiarity. The predicted greenhouse gas effect is out of order with the greenhouse gas concentration. The order of greenhouse gas concentration from greater to lesser goes Venus with the greatest, then Mars, then Earth, then Mercury. But the greenhouse gas effect, the order changes. Venus once again is first, but Earth is second instead of Mars, and Mars is third, and Mercury is fourth. Why does Mars, though having 4 times the greenhouse gas concentration of Earth, have less of a greenhouse gas effect? The answer lies in the difference in the makeup of the greenhouse gas molecules between the planets. Earth, unlike Mars or Venus, has water vapor as the dominant greenhouse gas molecule, whereas Mars and Venus have very little water vapor, and their greenhouse gas concentrations are 99% carbon dioxide. Now, to understand the importance of this, we need to understand molecular properties. For those of you still listening, let me explain it. We are now about to get to the heart of the matter.
The heart of the matter.
The heart. Here we go. When energy is absorbed by by molecules, there are 2 things that can happen. One is that the substance gets hotter, and 2, the substance can undergo a phase change. What is a phase change? Substances can exist in liquid, gas, or solid form. And when it goes from one form to another, that is called a phase change. Interestingly, phase change, though it is accompanied by an increase in energy, is not accompanied by an increase in temperature. Phase change occurs without an increase in temperature. That is very, very, very important. Now, to increase the temperature of a substance, the amount of energy required to increase the temperature of a substance is called its specific heat. For example, to elevate a temperature of 1 gram of water in its liquid state 1 degree centigrade requires 1 calorie of energy. That is the specific heat of water. Now, the other thing that can happen is a phase change. The energy required to change a substance from one phase to another is called its latent heat of fusion, its latent heat of freezing, whatever. And that occurs without a temperature change. Water is, H2O is unique on Earth because it is the only substance that exists in all three phases in the natural environment of Earth. So we find water as a gas, vapor, we find water liquid, and we find water solid. Carbon dioxide, on the other hand, exists only in the gaseous form on Earth. It would require massive pressures to make carbon dioxide solid, as we find in dry ice, which is made under massive pressure. Mm-hmm. But that is, of course, not natural to the Earth. Phase change requires far more energy than the energy required to elevate the temperature of a substance. For example, though water requires only 1 calorie of energy to elevate 1 gram of water 1 degree centigrade, it requires 540 calories of energy to change 1 gram of liquid water to vapor. And it does so without an increase in temperature. Thus, large quantities of sun's radiant energy are absorbed, which changes liquid water to water vapor without an increase in temperature. After the sun has set and its radiation level goes down, that is absorbed by the Earth, the atmospheric energy levels decrease and energy comes out of the molecules of water and becomes what? Dew. That's how dew is formed. The energy comes out of vapor and it converts a phase change into liquid form. That is dew. Now you know how dew is made. When this happens, the temperature does not go down. Now this is why on Earth that the desert has higher daily temperatures but lower nightly temperatures than humid regions, because humid regions, the radiation of the sun is absorbed by the water vapor and is then conserved by the water vapor at night. Now you know why.
That's right.
Now you know why the desert areas where you see those movies say, oh, I'm surprised how cold it gets at night in the desert. So now, dear listener, you know why the desert is hotter in the day and cooler at night than an area which has a high humidity. It is because of water vapor. That is the greenhouse gas effect here on Earth itself. And so the difference is a result of the difference between the greenhouse gas property of the individual molecules and the greenhouse gas properties existing between molecules. And I can assure you, you've never heard this anywhere before.
And it's amazing that none of these people who come on and say the global warming is an absolute science. The person that I had quoted before.
That wasn't a person. That was a creature.
Okay, this creature
in human form.
This creature in human form said that to debate about global warming would be the same thing to debate about the reality of gravity.
But, you know, there's a gigantic debate right now on what is gravity. We really don't know what gravity is. There's this string theory in physics trying to unite all the forces of nature. So there is a debate about gravity. So that shows you how feeble-minded that individual is. Okay, now we can see, if you've been listening, that the greenhouse gas effect within an atom is insignificant to the greenhouse gas effect between molecules. And the only greenhouse gas molecule in the atmosphere that exhibits the latent phase property, the latent phase of vaporization property, is water.
Right.
So it is the only molecule in the atmosphere that exhibits that greenhouse gas function. So let's do some calculations.
Okay.
Water vapor molecules are 25 times more prevalent in Earth's atmosphere than carbon dioxide molecules. Whereas the specific heat of carbon dioxide is 1/4 calorie of energy per gram, the specific heat of water is 1 calorie per gram. There really isn't that much of a significant difference there. But the latent heat of vaporization of water, a property which carbon dioxide does not have in Earth's environment because it lacks a liquid state, is 540 calories per gram. Therefore, 1 gram of liquid water absorbs 500 more calories than 1 gram of carbon dioxide. The Earth's atmosphere averages 10 grams of water for every gram of carbon dioxide. Thus, for every calorie of energy absorbed by carbon dioxide, water vapor molecules absorb 5,400 calories.
We will continue with this discussion on global warming. We'd love to have the opposite point of view. We invited everyone from Al Gore to the Sierra Club. They all did not want to come on the program because how are they going to refute this? This is really interesting science. 1-888-930-1787 is our Talkback number. We'll continue in a moment right here on the Talkback Radio Network, home of the Iron Microphone.
You are listening to the Talkback Radio Network. We hope you're being enriched by our program today. You may be listening via our archives or to our live broadcast. Dr. Gelman and Rabbi Rosenberg broadcast live on Thursdays from 11 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern, 10 to 11 a.m. Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. You may call the show live during those times, toll free at 888-930-1787, 888-930-1787, or you can find us in the archives 24/7 at ironmicrophone.com.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Dr. Lawrence Gelman is a South Texas-based physician and hospital administrator. His mission is to empower Americans with knowledge that will help change the direction of our country. Dr. Gelman has produced a series of DVDs with the facts on myriad political, social, and economic issues. At this time, he is so passionate about our country and the state of our government that he's declared a moratorium on any costs associated with his DVDs. He'll even pay the postage. Visit ironmicrophone.com and click on the store link. Choose from many outstanding DVDs, including The Hoax, Global Warming, A Convenient Lie, Holocaust, Pro-Choice, The Myth of Roe vs. Wade, and more. Visit ironmicrophone.com. Arm yourself with information that will change minds as well as the future of our country. Order the DVDs now while they're free. Do it quickly because this offer is subject to change in 90 days. Visit ironmicrophone.com and click on the Store tab to order your free DVD today.
Now, back to Talkback Radio with your hosts, Dr. Lawrence Gelman and Rabbi Stephen Rosenberg.
Back with you on the Talkback Radio Network, Rabbi Stephen Rosenberg and Dr. Lawrence Gelman. We're talking about global warming and a lack of our guests did not want to show up here to debate any of this stuff. Well, they've got yellow written all over their backs. 1-888-930-1787, 1-888-930-1787. Dr. Gelman's been giving us quite an education today on global warming. I had not known 98% of this, actually.
Okay, so we have shown that carbon dioxide quantitatively and qualitatively is insignificant. Just to go review a little bit, out of every million molecules in the Earth's atmosphere, 10,000 are water vapor molecules, which is the predominant greenhouse gas molecule. Of those 1 million, 380 are carbon dioxide. And of that 380, 10 are made by man. So of every million molecules in the Earth's atmosphere, 10 are from the combustion of fossil fuels. And now we're showing how not only is carbon dioxide insignificant in number, it is insignificant in effect. As we're doing these calculations, for every calorie of energy absorbed by man-made carbon dioxide, water vapor molecules absorb 180,000 calories of energy. So even if you eliminated 100% of the combustion of fossil fuels, that would eliminate 1 calorie of heat absorption for every 180,000 calories absorbed in the atmosphere. Immeasurably small. Now, that's if we eliminate 100% of the combustion of fossil fuels. The hysterical environmentalists only want us to be reduced by 20%. What would be the effect of a 20% reduction on the combustion of fossil fuels, which of course would drive us into the caves, I guess. The result of achieving this means a reduction of 1 calorie of heat absorption in the atmosphere for every 900,000 calories absorbed in the atmosphere. Nothing. It's like having $1 versus $900,000. Carbon dioxide is irrelevant in terms of Earth's temperature.
So why is it there's such a why is it that the other
We're
side
going to get to that.
makes such a big deal about it?
As evidence mounts that no general warming trend is occurring on Earth, as we have shown, and we show why, the mantra of the environmentalist huckster has changed from global warming to climate change. The supposed increased variation in climate as a consequence of combustion of fossil fuels. But you know what? If you look at the humid areas on Earth, which have higher greenhouse gas concentrations, or on Venus, what you find is that the greater the greenhouse gas effect, the less variance in climate. As now we talk about Mars, on Venus. Venus has a gigantic greenhouse gas effect, has no variance in temperature. So the more greenhouse gas effect you have, not only don't you get more climate change, you get less climate change. Unbelievable, isn't it? Now, another issue environmentalists raise is so-called tipping point, at which the level of greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere achieves a level where temperatures cascade upward inexorably when the greenhouse gas concentration comes to the level such as on Venus. Just a continuing ratcheting up of temperature. This would occur as certainly at some level of greenhouse gas concentration. But what is that level? We do know that such a tipping point has not been reached on Mars, even though its greenhouse gas concentration is 4 times that of Earth's, and its carbon dioxide concentration is 40 times that of Earth's. Since the only greenhouse gas level man can affect on Earth is carbon dioxide, the question arises, how much carbon dioxide needs to be produced by the combustion of fossil fuels to even get to the level of Mars? Earth has 10,000 greenhouse gas molecules for every 1 million molecules in the atmosphere. Mars' concentration of greenhouse gas molecules 1.7 times that of Earth. Therefore, for Earth's atmosphere to reach the level of greenhouse gas molecules comparable to Mars, we would need a 70% increase of greenhouse gas molecules, or 7,000 more molecules for every million molecules in the Earth's atmosphere. Today, Earth's atmosphere contains only 380 molecules of carbon dioxide for every million molecules in the Earth's atmosphere, but only 10 of those are produced by man's combustion of fossil fuel. Therefore, to add 7,000 more carbon dioxide molecules per million would require an increase in the combustion of fossil fuels 700 times more than today to reach the level of Mars. So that even if we doubled or tripled our industrial combustion of fossil fuels, that would have zero effect. So man would have to increase the combustion of fossil fuels 700 times from what it is today to reach the level of Mars, and Mars has a greenhouse gas effect less than Earth's is today. The issue of man-made global warming is a political one, not a scientific one. Saving the environment is not the goal of the environmentalists or the politicians. The goal is economics and power. Environmental groups reap billions of dollars in profits from fomenting this hysteria. The very existence of environmental groups depends upon contributions from useful dupes like those professors you're referring to at San Diego, and the fellow travelers, which is most of the people watching television today, and everybody who listens to Lady Gaga. All right? If truth were to be known, that the entire basis of the environmentalist movement was based upon lies, those contributions would cease, and these organizations, such as the Sierra Club and the University of San Diego, would mercifully disappear from the face of the earth. Con artists selling solar panels and windmills receive billions in government subsidies, much of which they pocket. Hello, Solyndra. And politicians receive huge amounts in the form of contributions from those subsidized energy and industries, as well as from legitimate energy companies, producing companies, seeking to avoid the fascist regulations of the government. And of course, there is the usual motive of government in everything else that it does, which is to increase its own power and enslave the citizen through taxation and control of their lives, which in this instance would be dictating to the average citizen how much energy they could use. Yet another form of government enslavement. Enslavement of the world's population to the gigantic bureaucracies which make up central planners and managers selected from the elites of the political world is one agenda upon which all governments can agree.
So you've put out this preponderance of evidence that really stabs in the heart of the global warming debate, and who the global warming people will say there isn't a debate, that there is no way for you to debate science, and it is beyond a reasonable, not beyond reasonable, it is fact. It is fact that
it was once fact that man could not create a device, a heavier than air device, to fly.
Right.
In fact, all the experts in 1900 said it was impossible. In the United States, when the Wright brothers created their airplane, it was 4 years before anyone even believed it happened. And amazingly enough, the Wright brothers sold their airplane to the government of France before anyone in the United States government would even listen to them.
So why is it that we have...
Was this person alive back then?
Who? No, I doubt,
no, you don't
doubt
think
it.
so?
I don't think so.
Because she does seem to have that feeble mind.
And yes, it does seem like to have that mind. And
thank goodness she wasn't around, because there would be no airplanes today. Because science had proven back in 1900 that the ability for man to create a device heavier than air that could fly was a physical impossibility.
Dr. Oreskes does say, she goes, I won't debate the reality of global warming any more than I suppose the doctor would agree to debate the reality of germs.
Every day, the elucidation of what germs are, the illnesses they cause, is being discovered. Remember, for hundreds and hundreds of years, for most of the period of man's existence, germs were not even known to exist. And the great scientists of the 19th, 18th, and 17th centuries all believed in all these nonsensical evil humors. And today, there are millions of people who still believe in that kind of thought processes. What the way not to have a debate is for only one side to present its opinion and no one else to be allowed to do so. Is this kind of hidebound, primitive, backward way of thinking that was prevalent during the times of the Great Inquisition, during the times of the Dark Age. Why were they called Dark Ages? No debate. You had the king is divinely inspired, has the power of life and death, and that kind of narcissism that exists in humankind is now manifested itself in these feeble-minded professors. Look, Rabbi, you're an educator. And so you educate people in various different ways. You don't say to them, this is so obvious that I shouldn't have to educate you. If you're too stupid to learn this on your own, then I'm not going to bother. Isn't the whole system of education, doesn't that exist, to educate people and take them out of their ignorance? It's frightening to me that these people are in universities. that they are actually spewing out their bilge to individuals who really don't know any better. And so this idea, I mean, if you really believe what you're saying to be true, and we know there are a very great number of skeptics. In fact, the majority of the world does not believe in man-made global warming. So it's not just me, but they don't even, you know why they don't believe in it? Because intuitively, they look at the world and they look at man and they say, how man is so insignificant. You know, we have these views from outer space, from the space shuttle and all that. And if you look at the planet Earth that's in the evening in darkness, and you can see the little pinpoints of light, all the energy that we're producing just to create pinpoints of light. But compare the pinpoints of light to what the sun can do. You've walked out of the sun, out of the bright sun, into a lit room,
right?
And doesn't it seem dark?
That's right.
And that's in an enclosed environment. How primitive we are in our energy production compared to the massive amounts produced by the sun. The idea that a man at this stage in existence has the capacity to do what the sun cannot do is ridiculous. Isn't it ridiculous? But we have professors in college that teach this kind of stuff. Oh, by the way, I want to mention this about Rick Santorum and his deal with colleges. You know, Republicans are really feeble-minded. They really are. They were talking about Rick Santorum called Barack Obama a snob because he thought everyone should have the opportunity. Of course, they were perceived as going to college, right? Mm-hmm. If Rick Santorum had a brain, which he doesn't, if Newt Gingrich had a brain, what he doesn't, you know what the immediate response to that is? Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Michael Dell did not graduate from college. Right. And who are they? Okay, the inventor of Microsoft, the inventor of Apple Computer, the inventor of Dell Computer. Albert Einstein and Thomas Edison didn't even go to college. And so if the Republicans had half a brain, which they don't, which is why you never hear them talking about this stuff, that would have been the reply, wouldn't it? Says, look at, everybody knows Steve Jobs, Michael Dell, and Bill Gates. Thomas Edison, mm-hmm. and Einstein, Albert Einstein. In fact, none of us in the world today can exist without a knowledge or an effect by those individuals. Mm. None of them graduated from college. That is how you respond. But since the Republicans are so stupid, here the Democrats throw these softballs at them right down the middle of the plate, and they swing and miss. Isn't it unbelievable?
Well, it's more than unbelievable. It's the fact that they're not even, you know, I wonder what would happen if you sat in on one of these professors' classes who talked about global warming, who talked about, you know, and you took the opposite point of view. I wonder if you'd pass the class.
What would happen to a Jew in Nazi Germany sitting in a